morning. Hi, I'm Stephanie from Buffer. I'm a team experience manager there. Kit's done a great job talking about what it is I mostly do. We're 89 people in 12 countries, so it's a lot of time zones that we work with. And we've thought a lot about what remote work is like, and I'm so grateful to be here today to talk to you about vulnerability and remote work. But before we begin, I do want to make a quick confession, and that is that I'm super stoked to be here, but I'm also absolutely terrified. So please don't stare at my hands trembling. And why is that? Because whenever I've mentioned that my talk is about vulnerability, people invariably say to me, oh, like Brené Brown. And because I'm a huge Brené Brown fan, this just kicks my imposter syndrome into high gear. So quick qualification, no, I'm not Brené Brown, I'm not trying to be. She is a phenomenal researcher who spent years and years of her life just diving into the research on shame and vulnerability. I'm just a huge introvert and nerd that has reflected on this because I find it really hard. And I also have been location independent for close to 4 years. So most of my team, we're a little team in a fairly big company. They're mostly in North America. So I've had to work really hard to create connections with a team that's awake when I'm asleep and asleep while I'm at work. So it's been really cool to think about that. And one of the things that dawned on me when I reflect on my experience is that showing up and being vulnerable have been absolutely critical in helping me build relationships with this team that I have come to love and that have helped me flourish at work. So I'm super excited to talk about this today. And when I began my reflection, I decided to start at the beginning. I wanted to think about why we've chosen remote work, why we've chosen to be digital nomads. And I think between all of us here in this auditorium today, there may be hundreds of personal reasons why we've chosen this life, or maybe this life has chosen us, I'm not sure. But if we put all these reasons together, a common thread might emerge, and that's got to do with freedom, right? I think location and independence gives us the freedom and flexibility to work when we want, wherever we feel happiest or called to be. And if we're really, really lucky, it gives us that space to work on whatever inspires us, because we're no longer stuck to a place or a space. And this freedom and flexibility also gives us a sense of autonomy, that we are living life the way we want to live it. And this autonomy helps us feel that our life is congruent, that everything is harmonious. Work and life are not separate, they're part of the same thing. Work isn't just work, and work isn't that thing we want to escape because we want to live our real lives. So the congruent life, the wholehearted life, as Brené Brown puts it, that's one where vulnerability and courage take center stage. And when I know with this crowd, when I mention vulnerability, we all already have a good sense of what it looks like when it comes to our parents, well, maybe not our parents, but our partners, our kids, our friends. And what I want to focus on today is just a tiny, tiny part of that landscape. It's about what it looks like when we can't see the people we work with face to face, when we can't see for ourselves how tired and overwhelmed someone is and calibrate our expectations accordingly, because we've all been there, right? So what does vulnerability look like in a remote setting, and how do we create the space with the people we work with to be vulnerable? I feel like that's a really important question for all of us. I think some of us may say, hey Steph, I don't work on a distributed team like you do. I am a business owner, I'm a freelancer, and we don't have a team per se. But I think collaboration is such a fundamental part of human life that it's kind of hard to escape it. It doesn't matter if you're working with an online publication, or your designer is 3 time zones away, or your co-founder is in another continent, Or maybe, you're part of this group of nomads that plans kick-ass conferences in 7 different locations over 7 years. You'll find yourself having to work with people wherever, in whatever capacity you're engaging with remote work. And it's such an important conversation to have because remote work as a movement is fairly new. I think we've always heard of telecommuting, but over the last 10 years or 5 years, it's gained such momentum. And we need to have those conversations about what it means to collaborate where we don't see each other face to face, right? So let's talk about that today. I want you to think about a situation, a project where you're working on. Maybe, and you're seeing a couple of red flags. Maybe you don't feel like the project timeline is realistic. You're just chasing this goal that you're never going to meet. Or maybe you don't feel that the work is distributed in a way that takes advantage of everyone's true strengths in the team. Now, what would a retro for such a project look like if you've not spent the time to carve out a space to be vulnerable? Would people be willing to really, really share what they think could be done differently or what went wrong? I don't think I've been in that position and I haven't dared to do it. And if I think about why, it's because people in that situation don't trust the team enough to be honest, to bring themselves, to just share their thoughts because there's a fear of sanction, you don't trust people. And with remote work, it's all the more challenging because there's also that sense of isolation and aloneness and lack of connection that can come with being remote. So these are barriers that can make being vulnerable a little bit more difficult, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit more today. So I'm not saying that vulnerability is easy. It's not. I've spent 2.5 years just beginning to scratch the surface of what it means to be vulnerable. I know queuing through Buffer. I joined Buffer in 2016, and we hit a bit of a snag that year. We discovered, I think around May or June, that our operating expenses were burning through our bank balance way faster than we were making money. So I might have understated it. It wasn't a bit of a snag, it was truly terrifying. And while we've recovered from that, we're in a much better place now. I will never forget what that year was like and how scary it was. And being new to the company, my response to that was, I'm gonna dig my heels in. I'm gonna be that superhero employee so that my job is safe and I am safe. And because I'm based in Singapore, I traveled a bit, but my base is there because my family is there. What that looked like was super long hours. I would start at 7, 8, or 9 a.m. and I'd be online past midnight because I wanted to connect with people on the East Coast. And I had one colleague on the East Coast once comment, like, hey Steph, I see you when I log off at night, and you're still there when I log on in the morning, like, do you ever sleep? So this continued. I never dared to admit to myself or say to anyone, like, I'm kind of struggling, I'm drowning here. I kind of need sleep, that's like the fundamental thing. Because I didn't want to come across as weak or not enough. This continued until I burned out really badly. And I find it so timely that we had a talk about burnout. And there's a panel on mental health. I think that's such an important conversation because it's hard when you can't get up in the morning. Or you get up in the morning and you're just in bed and you're like, my team is not there to like help give me a hug. You know, it's really hard. So my team, bless them, they staged an intervention. They were like, this is not sustainable. And I also had a few friends from the company at a retreat kind of corner me and say, Steph, we see what you're doing, it's not sustainable. So I'm really lucky in that regard. I've had really good people kind of open up the space for conversation with people I work with and also with myself about about showing up and being vulnerable and admitting that you can't catch every spinning plate. So yeah, fast forward today, it's not that there's less work, there's more. It never ends. But now I feel like there is this space to say to my team, hey, this strategy isn't working. We shouldn't be focusing on X instead of Y if this is the outcome we want. Or sometimes being vulnerable means I can say to a colleague, I'm kind of swamped right now. I can't deal with this at this moment, but can I circle back tomorrow? Because in the past, I would have been like, okay, I'll do it, and then I'll stay past midnight, and then I'll never sleep, and then the next day it's just like a hamster on a wheel. Or sometimes it's been as raw as saying to someone, things at home aren't going so well. It kind of feels like everything's falling apart, and I'm really sorry that I can't be fully focused on work and it's affecting your work. But I'm working on making it better. I'm working on clearing that stuff at home so that I can fully show up. So yeah, vulnerability isn't easy. And I'm not gonna pretend that it is. It's gonna always involve exposure and uncertainty and tough conversations. But what you get is the opportunity to show up as yourself, to fully engage with other people, and to take baby steps towards a wholehearted life, because vulnerability really is just that, a series of baby steps. And we can't get to courage without rumbling with vulnerability, so we kind of have to embrace the suck. You can tell I'm a big fan of Brené Brown. So I want to talk about what my team did, because they've been instrumental in helping me learn to be vulnerable. When I think about my little admin tribe, which is formed by the people and finance team, not very glamorous stuff in the tech world, but I like to think we're really important at building culture. The thing that underlies a lot of our communication and collaboration is a sense of safety, where people feel like they can say something and not have someone else take it personally, because nothing is meant to be personal. And we disagree all the time on a ton of things, but the disagreement is always about the subject and not the person. And no one feels like a lesser teammate because their idea didn't win, right? It's that sense that you can show up and be yourself and kind of speak your mind. And this sense of safety has been both incidental and intentional. Incidental because we've been in the trenches together, we've had some really tough times together. I've shared with you just one of those. And when you're in a stressful situation and you pull through, it forms bonds. As I'm sure the 7 and 7 crew is super bonded. It's just something different. But it's also been an intentional step for us to build this safety. We try not to judge or interrupt someone, or worse, tell them how they actually feel about the situation. Our managers also take the time to regularly check in with us about what we need for them to create a safe space for us to share our thoughts. And it comes down to little things like, how would you best like to receive feedback? Would you rather I write it out? Or do you want to just talk about it on a Zoom call first and then we'll unpack it together or over email? It's stuff like that. But this sense of safety builds trust over time. And trust is absolutely crucial in teamwork. So it's so fundamentally linked with vulnerability that I know I drew this arrow like safety, trust, vulnerability, but they kind of all work together in this dynamic flow. And trust and vulnerability grow together to betray one is to destroy both. So we need to really focus on that. Now, I know that I said trust takes time to build. Sorry, let's go back to that. Trust takes time to build, but it's so important for us to try and focus our energies on that. I know it's often tempting to just dive into the work and not focus on building that culture, right? But teams that trust each other are pretty awesome. They don't deal with the politics, they focus on the work. They are able to ask for help or ask questions And this was really hard for me, the apologies part, because I grew up as an only child, kind of never needing to apologize. I just did my own thing. So you learn to apologize. So there are a lot of sorries if you check our Slack channel, for example. But in addition to this, in addition to what I shared with you, if you just formed your team or you're just starting a new collaboration, it may take time, but there are also strategies that you can take. And I'm happy to share with you what Buffer has done to try and build opportunities for vulnerability and safe spaces. We have 360 feedback that's not related at all to our work reviews. It's purely developmental, and you don't have to take everything. It's just what people experience. It's their unique experience with you, but it's just a point for you to reflect on that. We also have masterminds, which complement our one-on-ones and our work syncs. And in these masterminds, it's just that space for you to talk about your professional development, to celebrate your wins, like that was a kick-ass event that we just did, or we just pulled off this product launch. Or it's also a space to just have a sounding board for the challenges that we have. Besides masterminds and 360 reviews, we also have dedicated spaces to ask difficult questions, or to just say, that was awesome. We need that space for feedback. We recognize that. And in town halls in Buffer, I would give you a sneak peek, but I don't have a recording with me. Some really difficult questions are asked. And when you see someone else being brave, that, I don't know about you, but something clicks in me. I'm like, if they can ask a difficult question and be honest and raw and vulnerable, and they're not in trouble, maybe I can be as well. So we have these spaces carved out. We also have done MBTI, Enneagram, all these things to help us understand each other better. Where is the other person coming from? I'm an Enneagram 2, I think, a helper. So my team understands that this is why I'm always up. I'm always trying to do the thing to help other people do their job. But when I talked about that space to ask difficult questions, it's not enough to have that space. If the questions are just like, oh, you feel that way, okay. Okay, our leaders also walk the talk. They answer the questions. Sometimes they've thought about it a lot and they just haven't shared it, and the answer is a fully formed one. Sometimes, and I kind of like these kinds of responses as well, it's them saying, I don't know. We haven't thought about it, but we're gonna figure it out together. And that really helps us, because when you see your leader being courageous and vulnerable and saying, I don't know, or you see someone else in the company willing to ask difficult questions, like for us, like all these things that Facebook is going through ethically, where do we stand because we're in social media? These questions that we grapple with, when we see those instances of courage, it's contagious and it builds. It just kind of like grows into this amorphous thing in the company, and that's really exciting. But before I wrap this up, I do want to qualify something really important. Okay, and that is that vulnerability is not indiscriminate disclosure. It's not a matter of going to everyone and anyone and telling them everything that you're scared of and just being petrified all the time. Because boundaries and intention are super important in being vulnerable. Yes, we want to be honest and we want to share our thoughts, but we need to think about who we're sharing the thought with. Why are we sharing it? What is the outcome we want? Am I sharing it with my manager because I want her to just kind of lay off me so I don't have to do the work? Or am I trying to be accountable and share the struggles that I have? Or if I tell a teammate that this and this is happening, it could be because it's work related, or it could be purely to build that bond, or we have that bond, and I feel like that's important. But the boundaries and the intentions they need to be in place. Otherwise, you're gonna always feel exposed and petrified and for no real reason. Okay, so that's really important. And as difficult as it is, I want to ask, what's the alternative? Why do we have to engage in that? Be so mindful of who to share with, when to share, what to share, and take that first step to share. Because the alternative is a disengaged life. And I don't wish that on anyone. It's a life where you're going to spend most of your day just not being fully present, not feeling at peace or congruent. And no, because that's not a life that any of us here wants. That's why we chose remote work. We chose to be digital nomads. We chose to not follow the traditional step, right? It's hard to be vulnerable, but that first step, that baby step, is the step towards a more wholehearted life. And I wish you the best. Maybe you'll start today or tomorrow or whenever you're ready. But I'm here to chat if you feel like you want to just talk about it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. All right, you guys know the drill. We're doing Q&A. Yeah, of course. All right, so think about your questions while I ask the first one. So, as you talked about, a lot of people here might not work full-time in a remote team, but we all do work with teams regularly. So how would you go about bringing up this topic with a team that you don't really feel like you're a part of because you're a consultant or a freelancer? But a lot of us, I have clients I've worked with for years, and it feels like you want to make sure that you do have that safe space to bring things up. So how would you go about being vulnerable with teams that you're not actually technically a part of, but you kind of go into?
That's such a great question. I feel like you gotta get a sense of who you're talking to, your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may respond really well when you say can we take a moment and create a space to talk about this? Other people, the moment they hear vulnerability, they kind of dash out. So with those kinds of folks, it might work to just say, before we jump into the project proper, can we just take 5 to 10 minutes to talk about how we're feeling about this, where this is going? Because, and then take that first step to be vulnerable, to just kind of dare a little bit. It might fall flat, you never know. Brené Brown says it could happen anytime. But when you put yourself out there, and courage is contagious, people start to see hey, I can be honest, and the person I'm working with isn't judging, isn't reacting that way. So we also have to create those spaces for people. It's a two-way thing. When we want to be vulnerable, we have to hold space for other people as well to really share their candid thoughts about a project.
Absolutely. Wonderful. All right, questions? Okay, we'll start with Marie, and then Sarah, and then Hannah, and okay, we won't have time for that many. I'm sorry, guys.
Hello, I have a question, because I know some cultures value saving face, only showcasing accomplishment, hiding struggles. How does Buffer, which has such an international team, handle vulnerability and culture tied together?
That's such a great one. Thanks for that question. I've thought about a lot about that because I'm from Singapore, and in Asia you don't you kind of just bite your teeth and bite your tongue and just power through it. And we've had to. A lot of our teammates are in North America, where it's let's talk about our feelings. Yeah, this win, and the Asians from Taiwan are yeah. So we've experimented with that a little bit about disclosure and feedback, and whether it should be done publicly or privately. And what we try to do is have both options. So if you want to share gratitude, and gratitude's a big part of that kind of culture as well. Some people thrive when it's a public thing and they can just declare their love for the world, and there's space for that. But there's also space for it in a one-on-one setting, and it's the same for the tougher conversations. We can have it at a town hall where the CEO is just kind of there giving his thoughts about a difficult topic, but it could also be one-on-one, or with our director of people or with anyone on the people team. And we just make sure that we respect someone's privacy, and we just try to handle that as delicately as possible, depending on what they're comfortable with. So it's an ongoing conversation and dialogue about where people are at.
All right, I think we have a mic here, and then let's get one to Hannah, and then to Sarah.
And great talk, by the way. I just think it's interesting when there's money at stake, or there's like your job is at stake. Can you afford to be vulnerable like that? And I know you might say like, well, can you afford not to be vulnerable? Otherwise we're missing the whole point. But I found this with some of the people I employ, you know, are they afraid to tell me of their vulnerabilities? I need to be open to that, to know if I have to redistribute work or something like that to someone else who's less vulnerable that particular day or month. Or I liked what you said about I'm going to try to work on my family life. I'm going to tell you that something's going on, but I'm adapting and fixing that as quickly as I can so I can be more, you know, open to what needs to be done in the work environment. But I've seen it on both sides now. People probably afraid to tell somebody who employs them, I'm vulnerable right now because they're afraid of their job. Or, I mean, I'm just trying to think other circumstances that I haven't dealt with, like people meeting with venture capitalists. You know, are you supposed to be vulnerable in those situations when you're pitching people and trying to get money from them? I mean, maybe that would work with some VC meetings, but probably not most of them, I would think, because that undermines confidence. So in these different kinds of scenarios, do you think that people have to internally talk to themselves about being vulnerable, not necessarily express it outwardly if they feel like they can't afford it? Or is it the answer that, well, you can't really afford not to express the vulnerability because it's already out there and people already know about it, but you haven't expressed it, so they don't think you've owned up to it, similar to your overworking hours? Which one do you think it would be?
I'm gonna take a stab at that, just based on personal experience. I think the first step is to be vulnerable with yourself first. That's why I mentioned the conversation with yourself. We need to have that clarity and the reflection of where we're at. I don't believe that we need to be the same level of vulnerable with everyone. So if you feel like the VC might not be the place, it probably isn't the place to say like, this is gonna crash and burn. So maybe don't do that. It's helpful though to say, these are the weaknesses we've identified, and these are the things we're focusing on to mitigate those weaknesses. And I think VCs appreciate that, or anyone worth collaborating with is worth being that honest with. It's not about running away from the problem, because I personally wouldn't want to collaborate with someone or get money from a stakeholder that's going to not be human about it. I think that's also a good culture check. And sometimes it's difficult for people you employ to be vulnerable with you because you're their boss. So I think what's important is creating that space to be vulnerable within the team as well, and trusting that they feel safe in that, so that even if they don't tell you directly, they're able to have those conversations and they're able to focus and engage with the work. And you can step in when you need to, but you maybe don't have to be there all the time. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Hannah?
Thank you for your talk. It's actually kind of tied into that. So I manage a remote team. It's only small, it's only 4 of us. But I find that I am quite vulnerable with them in terms of letting them know what's going on, whether it's good or bad. Sometimes maybe I overshare. But what I find is that they are very vulnerable with one another, and they organise a lot of stuff, but I don't get that feedback myself. And I'm wondering if you have any ideas to how to foster more of that from my position.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think we carry a lot of the stereotypes or beliefs from the traditional work, co-located work, hierarchy, where it's like, that's my boss, I can't say that. I find personally that it's been helpful. I've been in that position where, yes, my manager's in Nashville, and it's been really hard and I just started working with her in December last year. It was hard to build that relationship, and it's taken, I want to say, 9 months to get there. But what's helped is that one-on-one space, and just trying during each conversation to open up, where she's been candid and I've been candid. And sometimes it just takes that constant effort, that reminder, I'm showing up, I'm being open with you. I think in a group it might be a bit more challenging if you're not there yet, but one-on-one, just always showing up, showing through your actions that I want to be vulnerable with you, I want you to feel safe to be vulnerable with me. and that one time, that first time that they are not reacting. That's been absolutely crucial. That breakthrough moment with my manager was when I was like, when you say it this way, it makes me feel this way, and it's really hard, and I was crying. But that was a breakthrough moment for us, because from then, she knows that I'm showing up as myself and I'm really trying my best, and so is she. And it's just been life-changing.
Thank you. Last question, Sarah.
I also have a small remote team, and I had the experience this year of one of my team members going through some stuff, and it wasn't until we were in person and I could see her that I was like, so what's going on? And she finally opened up. How do you guys foster that without being in person? I mean, we do video calls and stuff, but like, how do you build that into a remote relationship in the way it might happen in person?
That's a good one. I think although we talk about remote work being like the default and that's a great thing to aspire to, that FaceTime is really important. We've also had really difficult, important conversations when we're at on-sites. And those are breakthrough moments as well. I think what's helpful when we don't have those opportunities is to focus on patterns. So just to always be aware of how a person communicates, so that when there's a change, or when we see that things are slipping through the cracks, that we can just say, hey, I noticed that this is happening. Like, is everything okay? Do you want to talk about it? And they're probably going to say no the first time, but just always asking and showing that you're available, that might help a little bit. I'm not always then. This look of control is just because there's chaos.
Well, thank you so much.